Hi there, it's Kevin with RogueDeckBuilder.com here with this week's episode of the Market Monday. This week I'm going to do a topic that I hate doing because I think it's not very relevant, but a lot of people ask me for my opinions on pre-ordering and what cards I think are going to either go up in price or go down in price in Amonkhet. So a little bit of a forewarning. I always think it's your best bet just to wait until the dust settles. There's one big factor which is going to decrease the prices of all cards in Amonkhet, and that's called draft and sealed. This set is going to be opened by itself. Of course, it's a first set, so first sets are subjugated to falling in price more than second sets, as they always have just more supply out there, due to the fact that sealed is going to be 6 packs always, and draft is going to be 3 packs for the first few months until they get the second set. And then when the second set comes on, then you draft an additional 1 pack per every 2 pack of Hour of Devastation, for example, and then 2 packs of these for every 4 packs in sealed for Hour of Devastation. The first card I want to talk about is Chandler Initiative. This is one that I think has potential of going up. I'm going to say potential with a soft P, not a hard P, because I don't think that this card, most likely, I think $3 is probably the right mark for this card, if it even does see play in a 1 or 2 decks. The thing that I like about Chandler Initiate is it's very similar to Servant of the Conduit, which if it starts to see play in multiple decks, I think $3 will be outstripped, and this card could easily go up to the $5 mark. Now, I highly warn people about investing in cards based on the fact that they could become Hangerback Walkers or Smuggler's Copter, because I think that those are very unique because they are colorless and it's easy to splash them in any deck. The power level of those 2 cards were insane in their respective formats, and rares have a hard time in an open set ever going above a $5 mark. You can go for reference back to cards like the Tireless Tracker when it was at its height of standard playability, as well as the Sylvan Advocate. At one point in time, Sylvan Advocate had a 40% dominance, meaning that 40% of all decks were running, and it was usually on average of 4 copies of the Sylvan Advocate, and it had a hard time really going above the $5 mark. So I think that the Chandler Initiate is going to struggle from that fact alone, and so the $3 mark, this is why it's my number 10 for the potential of going up, is I can see it replacing Servant of the Conduit in non-energy decks, and it might just be better. So for example, if this wants to be put in like a Jund or a green-black mid-range type deck, I know it's got some non-bows with the Winding Constrictor, so it can't really go in the +1/+1 strategy either, but this is a potential mana dork early that then can be a beater later on. It feels very similar to Sylvan Advocate in that respect. So energy decks, of course, will still want the Servant of the Conduit because it will give you the ability to add the energy to your deck that then can be used if you don't need the mana. But you're going to get at least 3 activations with the Chandler Initiate, and then with other cards, this could be a great place to dump the -1/-1 counters that you get on the other bigger cards. And the Chandler Initiate still should survive and still be able to activate and provide mana. Usually when a mana dork like this is adopted, though, there's potential for a gain, and that's why it's my number 10, because $3 to $5 is a very slight and risky. Most likely this won't go anywhere. I think $3 is the right price for this card. On to my number 9. Now this is probably the card that's getting talked about more than any other card in Amonkhet, which I think is going to be a bust, which is Harsh Mentor. Harsh Mentor is just too high right now. People can say, well, what about the reference of the collective brutality? Because I think the collective brutality is very similar to Harsh Mentor as far as that it's going to see some play in standard, but where this beauty shines is modern. Now, a lot of people are talking about just chucking this in red. I think that red burn is pretty much at its point where it can't get much better unless there's just a really busted card. How burn can get better is better actual burn spells. The creature slot's pretty much taken. I think if you compare this to Eidolon is just better than Harsh Mentor because it's always going to get its 2 damage in, where this is most likely gonna, against some decks, just not do anything. Like, the thing though that I like about Harsh Mentor is it does really punish fetch lands right out the gate, And then, but if they do just have a bull, when you play this card, you get no value out of it. And I don't think that's what Burn wants. Zoo gets a little more interesting because Zoo, it's a 2/2. It can be played off Burning Tree Emissary. It's a creature. It's something they want to be doing. So I think that those type of decks will adopt the Harsh Mentor, at least in the sideboard. But I don't see a clear place where they're going to put this in every modern deck that wants to be running a 2-drop, like Eidolon, for example, how Eidolon just took over a slot in Burn. I just don't see this Harsh Mentor. Now, Standard gets a little more difficult. Yes, every Standard deck currently in the format has a creature or land or some sort of activated ability that does trigger off Harsh Mentor. The problem is, though, the Planeswalkers currently in Standard are the Boogeymans, the Chandras, the Gideons, the Saheelis. Those want to be punished, and unfortunately, Harsh Mentor only works off artifacts, creatures, or lands, so it completely misses the Planeswalkers, and I think that's huge for Standard. I don't think that affecting 1 or 2 cards in Standard per deck is going to justify the Harsh Mentor slot. All right, so on to my number 7. Number 7 is a card that I think is undervalued just because this has a lot of playability in casual and commander and, yeah, just really casual decks. And if there's one thing that people underestimate, it's the casual crowd. And I'm guilty of that too. Coming from a competitive background, I completely ignored cards that were just casual favorites. I think Plague Belcher is the perfect card for casual play and can still see competitive play. This is a 5/4 for 3 mana that whenever a zombie you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life. So what really makes this synergistic is some of your zombies do want to die early. So think of Gravecrawler here. You just put the counters on Gravecrawler and then cast it back. So turn 3 you have a 5/4 beater and you still now have a use out of the Gravecrawler. Before this in zombie tribal decks, for example, I've done a ton of zombie tribals. I'll have to show you some of my past zombie tribal decks that I've built with either Grim or I think that Marquesa was one of my go-to zombie tribal decks, and I've even played some of the Unearthed zombie creature and Lord of the Tressorhorn. And I had similar combos that want to use zombies dying, and I use cards like Blood Artist and Zulaport Cutthroat. Well, here is a zombie itself. Now you have the Diregraph Captain and the Plague Belcher. Whenever a zombie dies, opponents lose life, and it doesn't target like the Blood Artist does, which makes it a lot easier to get around hexproof type cards in Commander. This I think that this is just the perfect card based upon the fact that it is going to want to be in zombie tribal competitive decks and zombie tribal casual decks. So I think it's a little undervalued at the moment. I think people are going to want to be picking these up for their decks, and it should cause a temporary price increase to the Plague Belcher. $1.50 is probably the right mark, because if you look at like Crypt Breaker, you look at Diregraph Colossus, you look at a lot of the Thalia's Lieutenant, these type of cards that have either small amounts of play in competitive, but do have like a wide range of play in casual and commander. They typically, while they're in their standard sets, they have a hard time getting above $2. But I think long term, Plague Belcher, if this goes down anymore, or during the height of draft season, this goes down to a bulk rare, this is going to be your casual pickup. On to number 6. On number 6 is going to be another one that I think has a potential of going up for very similar reasons of Plague Belcher. This could be the Panharmonicon or the Paradox Engine of the set. The competitive players are out the gate like, nope, not competitive playable, and they just skip over it. Where every Brea deck wants one of these in their deck. Every Trostani EDH deck wants one of these. Every Rise the Redeemed. All 3 of those commanders are insanely popular. Plus, this goes beyond just creature tokens. It goes on to all tokens, which gets even more degenerate with what it can do, which is anointed procession. Clues do still happen in this format. So is it worthwhile for clues to get doubled? So an effect would create 1 or more tokens under your control. It creates twice that many of those tokens instead for 4 mana. But Anointed Procession is it is the casual commander card that everyone is going to want. Panharmonicon Paradox Engine. This is that card. And I think $2.20 is probably too low for this card. I think it's going to go up. I think that actually the demand will outstretch the supply quicker than you think. Because like I said, Brea is still it's the second most played commander Every Brea deck is probably going to want to throw this in because of the synergy that has with Brea and any other token-based effect. I am a huge fan of Anointed Procession as kind of the casual Panharmonicon pickup. All right, on to the number 5. Number 5 is also another card that I do think that has the potential of going up, just at a sheer power level, and this is New Perspectives. New Perspectives is the bulk rare that I am going to choose to having potential of going up. It is a 6 mana spell. It actually does have an ability that is quite relevant, though, for 6 mana, which is draw 3 cards. It's also an enchantment that can be flickered and continue to draw 3 cards. So keep that in mind. If there's anything that flickers a permanent, Felidar Guardian, for example, this can then draw you some more cards. Do I think it goes in that particular deck? No. However, this has a bunch of potential in formats going back, Modern, Legacy, Commander especially, what the cycling costs go down to 0. There are a lot of cards in the history of Magic that have heavy cycling costs that actually want to be cycled. Again, if you go back into Legacy, there is a set that had a bunch of cycling cards that were overcosted because that's what you wanted to do with them. And same thing with Modern. There is a set that tries to cycle and get an effect out of the cycling. So I don't think that we should underestimate New Perspectives as far as the casual playability, the competitive playability, and the potential of this actually seeing a Modern or Legacy deck. I know it's a stretch for a 6 mana, but we've seen like Hive Mind type decks. This, to me, seems like if you actually can get a New Perspectives out, that you could definitely go off with the cycling cards. All right, so now we can get on to some more bust cards. This one I think is way too high, even though it is a mythic, and you'd say, well, 650 is low for a mythic. Yeah, but this mythic I think is just, where is it going to fit right now in Standard? I mean, there's one place that I might try it, which is in my Angels Aetherworks Marvel deck, because it is an angel that does have a relevant ability, and in my case, I think I do want a kind of control card. And 5 mana isn't hard for the deck to, once you're clogging the board with Servants and Rogue Refiners, and then if you just have to hard cast the Angel of Sanctions for 5 mana, then removing a card is going to be worthwhile. Instant speed removal card with Aetherworks Marvel is going to be worthwhile. But beyond that, I think that this really competes with Gideon and with the Archangel Avacyn, especially at this point. And it's just not something in a Grasp of Darkness format that I think is going to be very relevant. So Angel of Sanctions is a 5 mana for 3/4. Enters the battlefield, you can exile an online permanent until Angel of Sanctions leaves the battlefield. Yes, it can get some kind of fun stuff with, this is a perfect card to try to break with Wasteland Strangler and the Eldrazi Displacer. So keep that in mind. Yes, I understand that having access to Battle for Zendikar cards that can get rid of cards off of exile could make this a thing, but that's a lot of ifs. That's a lot of like stars that have to align for this sort of combo to work. And when you just look at the sheer things of okay, if you're in a Flicker deck, would you rather Flicker this or Flicker an Archangel Avacyn? So the Embalm is kind of good too because you can get a token back, but that means that your Angel's gone to the graveyard. I just do not see this at a $6.50. I think this can be more like a $4 card that has a lot of, I don't know, there's just too many what ifs for me. And in the current Standard, I think it's too much of a what if than an absolute of this card being seeing constructed playability. All right, so now we're getting into the juicy cards that I think have a huge potential of going up. This is my number 4, which is Sweltering Suns. Sweltering Suns has cycling 3 and 3 damage to each creature. It's not bad at all. Usually these always see play in their constructed format. Think Anger of Gods, think Slagstorm. Right now we have Radiant Flames, but Radiant Flames is awkward because it can only go in a 3-color deck to make it worthwhile, as its potential can't get above 3. Now this is 2 red, so it's harder to go in 3-color decks, so of course Radiant Flames is going to be the card. As soon as that card rotates, though, Sweltering Suns is going to be the card of choice for red sweepers. And 3 damage does a good job against Mardu. It kills like Depala. It kills the majority of cards. It will kill all Gideon tokens. And it also does very well against Copycat because it will kill all the Rogue Refiners, the Servant of the Conduits, as well as the Whirler Virtuoso and all tokens. So I think that Control will want this, especially Control decks like Thing in the Ice might want this because it doesn't kill the Thing in the Ice. And I think the thing in ice decks, unfortunately, are really suffering from Fatal Push. But if you go the Fever Visions route, this is going to be probably the sweeper of choice for that type of card. And I think that $1.47 is probably too low for a card like this with such huge potential. Now, I don't expect much for this. If you go back to like Radiant Flames, it went down to bulk. If you go back to Anger of Gods, it went down to close to bulk. If you go back to Slagstorm, it also went down to around this mark. But these cards do have potential of going higher. So if this does drop in value and goes down to bulk rare, I think this is the card to pick up. Again, I think that I'll give this as a disclaimer. All cards on this list are probably more than likely going to go down. Amonkhet seems to be a kind of a bust of a set. And it does have, of course, masterpieces, or what do they call invocations, that people are going to chase. And the value of the set is too high for what I think this set has potential-wise. To me, it doesn't seem near the power level of Kaladesh, or even if you go back, I think this is actually worse power level than even Battle for Zendikar, which right now I would say is the worst set in Standard, if you compare it to all the other sets. So, I don't know. I think that everything has to give. And even cards that I think have potential of going up could just suffer from that having to give because there's too much value at the moment. Alrighty, so on to the next card, on to number 3, which I think is a huge bust card because I just don't see how this is going to be relevant. And $4 for a rare, you better have a deck that this is going to see a ton of play in. And this is Champion of Ronis. Champion of Ronis is a 4-mana 3/3. When you exert Champion of Ronis as it attacks, you may put a creature card from your hand on the battlefield. Every card that wants to be cheated in right now in Standard, like thinking of the Ulamogs, are like mostly Sildrazis, and they want to be cast. They don't want to be just cheated into play. So I have a hard time thinking that you're going to run this over Aetherworks Marvel. That's the exact slot you're looking at. You're going to get more than often stuck with cards in your hand that aren't going to get much value. People would say, well, even if you put in like a Rogue Refiner, that's not bad. How are you going to attack in with Champion of Ronis in this format? I don't see it. It's going to die. Still dies to Fatal Push on if you have the Revolt. It will die to Grasp of Darkness. It will die to a lot of the 3-damage red spells, like Incendiary Flow and Fiery Temper. It dies to the Yahini's Expertise. It dies to the new Slagstorm that we just talked about, the Sweltering Suns. This card is just not playable in Standard at the moment. It's going to be too much of a liability in your hand. The thing is, like, I have more experience failing at these type of cards than most people. I got excited about the Wolf, that whenever you targeted it, you get a 2/2 Wolf. I got excited about, like, all these cards that get advantage as soon as they attack. They're catnip to me. And I think it's just old man Kevin now experiencing failure after failure that just shows me this card is not going to be a card that I think it wants haste. I know we do have a haste card, but now we have 2 cards that just don't synergize well with what you want to be doing with big drops because they don't really help your late game plan at that point. There's better ways to cheat in a card right now, and I don't think the Champion of Ronis is going to be that card to cheat in the Gerhulks or cheat in the Eldrazi's or cheat in, what do we even have at this point that wants to be cheated in? Not a lot. So, I mean, geez, my best case scenario is just cheating in an Avacyn and giving it indestructible for a turn. So, I don't know. I think $4 is way too high for this. Yes, people are like, oh, well, this is an Elvish Piper and Commander. Sure. There's better ways to do it, though. There's better ways. So I think this one inevitably has to fall from a $4 mark down to about $1. I think $1 is probably the right price point. And looking over the list, that's a 75% decrease. There are very few cards that I think that are going to decrease this amount in the Standard or in Amonkhet. On to number 2, which is going to be another card that I think is going to inevitably be a bust, and it's just because there's a card called Grasp of Darkness. There is one silver lining to Gideon of the Trials. Gideon of the Trials is something that pairs up or synergizes very well with Heart of Khorne. These cards were meant for each other. And it does have Liliana's nice little tick up to in a mid-range / control deck to stop what your opponent's doing for a turn. So it's very good against Heart of Khorne as well. So I do enjoy this card. I think that if there wasn't Heart of Khorne in the format, though, I have a hard time really having any value with Gideon of the Trials. Now, they are going to exist inevitably their entire Standard because they'll rotate the same time. So that's good about Gideon. However, the Grasp of Darkness Even giving him indestructible and dying to Grasp of Darkness is a huge liability. The emblem is kind of lackluster, but who cares? It's a 3-mana spell that's just going to continue to beat down. So I do think Gideon of Trials is going to be playable. However, with the other Gideon in the format right now, and just Grasp of Darkness in the format, I think it's going to be too narrow where people are going to play this. I think the old Gideon from Battle for Zendikar is just better at the moment. And yeah, where does Mardu or Black-White Control or even, you know, the Black-White kind of tempo deck, do they want Gideon? And I'm thinking we're going to have like a 4-1 split or a 4-2 split, or they're going to split. So potential after rotation, absolutely. Potential now, very too narrow for my blood. And $28 is just way too high of a card when even old school Gideon had a hard time ever going above that price. This, again, it's going to be a Planeswalker out of a first set. These cards have a very, very, very hard time going up in value or staying at their pre-sale price and inevitably crash. And I think this one's going to have its hardest crash. I think this is going to be a $15 card, $10 to $15 card when the dust settles. We can talk about this card again as rotation is coming up, but in a draft, this card being drafted over and over and over and over, that's when we'll talk about investing in this. Absolutely not now. Sell it if you get it in your pre-release or your boxes you want to buy. Speaking of boxes, let's do a shameful self-promotion or shameless self-promotion. We do have pre-sale boxes over at roguedeckbuilder.com with $95 plus shipping. So if you're interested in supporting the channel, that'd be a great way to do so, is to buy from us rather than buy from eBay. Support your local game store first, but if you, for whatever reasons, do not have a local game store to support or just don't want to, I'd appreciate if you support Rogue Deck Builder. All right, drum roll, on to my number one card that I think has the most potential of going up, which is also at bulk price, which I think feels very much like a Blessed Alliance / Dromoka's Command. This is Prepare / Fight. I really like Prepare Fight because I do see that it can go in decks at the moment. So Prepare end of it says untap a creature gets +2/+2 in lifelink. That's going to go very well with Exert cards. That's going to go very well with untapping a... So you can crew a Heart of Koran that is tapped, and then... No, it has Vigilance anyway. Ha ha ha. So you can crew, or you can crew a Heart of Koran, and then untap the creature that's crewing it. There we go. That's better. And give it +2/+2 in lifelink in it until end of turn. So in Standard right now, which is about smashing creatures against each other, I think that this card is pretty undervalued at the moment. Like, we do have Saheeli combo, but if that deck gets banned, we're going to go back to like a green-black Constrictor or green-black Delirium or Jund Energy or, of course, Mardu's here to stay. At that point, you can go into some other like Bant or white-blue tempo-based decks. You can go back to Liliana being a thing. And I think that Prepare matches up very well against all of those matchups. And the problem is historically, you don't want to play a card like Prepare. We've had tons of cards in the past that do very similar effects. And it's just like, okay, well, it's one card that I'm going to use. Am I going to get enough value out of it? Sure. Maybe put it in a sideboard. But what puts it over the type is the terrible Fight part. So Fight is really, really bad by itself, because this is basically the exact same thing that Prey Upon does for 1 mana. But what makes this so good is it's 2 cards in 1, which is Dromoka's Command and Blessed Alliance potential there. That you're going to get more value out of a card that was good by itself. So the thing about Dromoka's Command that was good by itself is you had the Fight mechanic to it. And then it was just added icing on the top of the cake, where they gave it +1/+1, or player had to sacrifice an enchantment, or prevent the damage of a sorcery. All of those were so good with Dromoka's Command in the one package. Prepare and Fight, you're going to get 2 value out of 1 card. What's wrong with that? This card is going to see Standard play. It's amazing. I love it already, because I think once Saheeli combo is out, if they do ban the piece, Green-White Humans becomes a very good archetype again, because it pairs up very well against Green-Black Constrictor, and it also pairs up extremely well versus Mardu. Green-white has all of the pieces right now to be a something that pushes through aggro decks. It's one of the few decks that doesn't just get completely destroyed by the Mardu curve of one drop into 2-drop into Unlicensed Disintegration, or even worse, 1-drop into 2-drop into 3-drop into Unlicensed Disintegration into Gideon. Green-white humans can kind of go, all of their cards are really, really powerful, and like Prepare can actually get online the human that needs to have a creature with power 4 or greater to attack, for example. And then the fight is going to be very strong on top of this. I like this with Lone Rider. It's another way to get Lone Rider flipped, which is kind of cool. And then later on, when you fight an Eldrazi, a 4-foil Eldrazi that has lifelink as well, you're going to get huge value out of that. So this bulk rare card, I think, is beyond New Perspectives, which I talked about New Perspective having like a huge implication of it could be a deck. I think Prepare Fight is the one card out of Amonkhet that I can say without really failing that this card is standard playable. This is a powerful card that everyone is overlooking. So if you are going to invest in one card, here's my pick of Prepare Fight. So anyway, interested in what you think of Boom Bust. Is my list completely off, or is there something that I completely forgot about? What do you think of the archetypes that are going to see play in Standard? I think that Saheeli combo's gone. If you go over to Twitter right now, all the pros are outraged right now that there is an earlier ban list. They think it's going to affect their ability to brew for the Pro Tour if they're going to wait and ban it like last minute, or I think the ban list announcement's in a week is what it is. And a lot of people are just already upset because they want to be brewing right now, and it's so pointless trying to brew while the combo is still legal. So anyway, we'll update you as soon as possible with all of that, and I'm going to be brewing like crazy because it was never Mardu was never the problem in Standard. It was always Saheeli. All of the decks that can beat Mardu get completely destroyed by Saheeli combo, and it's really made us into a 2-format deck because Mardu is the only deck that consistently can have play versus Saheeli and some of these other heavy control-based decks. So mid-range decks just don't have a shot in the world against Saheeli at the moment. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this list. This is Kevin with RogueDeckBuilder.com. Thanks for watching.